Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates, Village of Mamaroneck. I'm once again very proud to have with me Mayor Norman Rosenblum and Deputy Mayor Lou Santoro, who's also one of our trustees. Before we get started, we have a lot to discuss, but we want to hear from the candidates. I know you want to hear from the candidates too, so let's start with Lou.
Thanks, Bill, once again for hosting our segment here. I would just like to say that the past 6 years, I really enjoyed serving for the residents of the village. I hope to continue to serve for the residents. We still have more to do. I'm asking the residents to vote for myself from Norman on November 3rd. We'll get into later on what lines we're on and everything like that as the program proceeds.
Very good. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and to echo Lou's sentiment, I can tell you that I have loved nothing more politically than being the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck and working along with Lou. We have accomplished a terrific amount of positive things in the Village of Mamaroneck over the past 6 years. We are asking the electorate and the voters to consider continuing that support for another 2 years. We have a lot of things that we want to continue.
Correct.
It's very positive. I would just very quickly note that the reason is over the past 3 terms, I would note that the Village of Mamaroneck has been rated #1 by 3 separate individual groups from outside the Village of Mamaroneck, which is great, and that's what we want to continue. We want to continue the Village of Mamaroneck being #1. And that's basically what it is. And I would say one thing before we start. When we discuss these programs, there is a clear, more so than the 3 prior races, there's a clear and distinct difference between Lou and myself and our opponents. And we will cover that tonight. And ones that will actually affect the direction that this village takes. Will we continue to be successful in #1, or will we go back to backroom politics that it was around for 10, 15 years ago?
Mr. Mayor, we talk about being #1, and those entities that have rated the Village of Mamaroneck, come from the outside, and independent people that are looking to the community to see, is it the best place to live, is it the best place to grow a business, and that's what they're saying, and they're saying that it's #1. But one thing that I know is that the voters of the Village of Mamaroneck have rated you guys #1 over the past three elections, and they've rated you #1 because they've continually elected you into office. But they put you into office to do something important, and that's to protect our community. That's to protect the residents, protect the business owners, and to do what's best to make the tough decisions, to build consensus, and to provide strong leadership to this community. So that being said, let's get into the thick of things here, and let's talk about this campaign, some hard decisions that are going to be made by the taxpayers, and this election. We know that your opponents have a long history of being very litigious and ultimately costing the taxpayers of the Village of Mamaroneck millions.
Millions. Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor.
Correct.
Well, not only that, it was interesting on some of the latest comments made by our opponents that they are seeking to resurrect the disaster of having a full-time attorney in the Village of Mamaroneck. We proved that by one of my first acts was, in fact, to change from a full-time attorney to a part-time attorney. And just on fiscal responsibility alone, we saved over $100,000 on that. There is no small community the size of the Village of Mamaroneck in this entire area like the Village of Mamaroneck has a full-time attorney. It's ridiculous. And all it does is duplicate and bring in politics, quite honestly. We have a full-time village attorney, Charlie Goldberger, who actually is from McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. And we use all of those lawyers that are there and on different occasions. And we don't have to spend extra money. Unfortunately, some of the board, who the opponents are agreeing with, that we should have other outside attorneys on top of those attorneys that the village does. It's just ridiculous. Natchez has caused this village to be in a court continuously over the past 10 years. It also brings up a little hypocrisy. While his greatest faux pas, as far as I'm concerned, is the suit with the Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club, because he happens to live across the street from the Sound. And there were 2 parties involved. One party actually had the wherewithal to at least negotiate, which he should do, and have fiscal responsibility. Yet the hypocrisy is, while he's telling everybody this is terrible of Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club, it appears to me, in my opinion, he is geared by the almighty dollar. Lou and I have absolutely no poke in the fire in here. Lou is retired. I work for an international avionics company. I've lived here my entire life. I plan on living here even after I'm mayor. And we do what is good for the Village of Mamaroneck and for all the residents and represent everybody, not our own little personal agendas. And that is best illustrated by this continuous fight while he was the president and led SAPOA to sue the village and other lawsuits that cost us literally millions of dollars. Yet he turns around in his company and he's representing someone who's trying to jam 3 homes into Flagler Drive. Oh, it's okay for him to keep his type of home, but it's okay. It doesn't matter about the people on Flagler Drive or any place else for that matter. I find it extremely hypocritical, and that's exactly what the Village of Mamaroneck does not need.
Lou, when we talk about being an elected official, you have to be able to be unencumbered by your private life so you can make decisions in the public life. Do you feel that that Mr. Natchez is going to be able to make fair-minded decisions based on his history of litigation with the Village of Mamaroneck if he were able to become an elected official?
Great question, because this individual, Mr. Natchez, he runs a business in the village, and that's his bread and butter, that's his livelihood. He's involved with numerous the clubs along the sound and stuff like that. He's doing work for them. He's representing in front of boards. He does engineering work for them and everything. But just to get back one second, just to backtrack.
No, he's not an engineer.
No, I know.
Even
Well,
claim it.
the article in the paper stated he was an engineer, but
Remains to be seen.
Remains to be seen. But getting back to the attorney, just real quick, was when Norm and myself were elected in 2010, we went to a part-time attorney. The savings was from $140,000 plus benefits to $60,000, which we stand now. And what people are forgetting is that they're campaigning, it's time for a change. We're only 2 votes here. If a change has to be made, they have the majority. They can change it at any time. And the last campaign 2 years ago or 4 years ago was, once we get in, we're going to a full-time attorney. Once the majority saw that this is working and it's cost-effective, there's never been a discussion about it, correct?
Absolutely, and here's the key to that. While Lou and I have been minority members of the board, the fact of the matter is, even with the 3 Democrats that we've been in 3 different boards, quite honestly, we've learned to work together. Obviously, not all the time. There's always difference of opinions, but you learn to work together. I think that there is a difference. Do you want to continue this difference where you can learn and discuss things and come up with what's best for the Village of Mamaroneck? Or do you want people with personal agendas that I believe are negative to the future of the Village of Mamaroneck? There's not a doubt in my mind.
Lou, there can't be an us and them when we're making decisions for the Village of Mamaroneck. There has to be a collective effort made by the board, and it's up to both sides of the aisle to work together and to build that consensus. One thing that I remember from your candidacies and things that I've seen over the past several years is that you were very proactive to settle lawsuits, to take that opportunity to eliminate the possibility for lawsuits extending well past their livelihood. Do you want to talk about that, Lou?
Yeah, that's when we first, like I said, not to talk about past, but when we first came in, I think our deductibles were $100,000 on our insurance companies. They're down to $5,000 to $10,000 now because we're selling insurance companies. We have a land use attorney who's very good. We have not been involved in a land suit in 4 or 5 years now because we paid a little more money to get this individual, and we're doing the right thing. Right now, there's very few that are on the books. The only ones that recently to talk of was a TOD that was passed last year, and there was 2 residents who filed an Article 78 against it, and the village was on the hook to defend that at a cost of $32,000. One of those individuals who's involved in it is Mr. Natchez's treasurer for his campaign. So the thing is, they're all tight-knit with each other, and so let's be real. What are we getting there? Are we getting a candidate who's best for the village, or is going to listen to the group of people that are behind him that are causing this village and the taxpayers extremely a lot of money?
It sounds like a backroom deal, whether it is or not, but we have to focus on what's ahead of us and what's in front of us. And we need to be mindful, as Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. We need to be very mindful of the people that we have in office, whether they're volunteers, whether they serve on boards, whether they represent a certain portion of the village, or they're elected officials like Norm and Lou. Now, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned SAPOA before. Just tell us a little bit more about what's happening there.
Well, SAPOA is a community group, basically in Shore Acres, the Shore Acres Point Owners Association. That is a group that doesn't necessarily represent everyone. That's just a group that's theirs. They have certain rights as landowners, but they have a singularly minded agenda, which I would note, I believe, is all Dan Natchez, particularly with his fight with the Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club. I got reports, people called me up and said, this guy called up and he asked everybody for $500 to continue his fight. Maybe they should call up and ask for $500 to defend the people that live on Flagler Drive. But the fact of the matter is, you touched on something before, and Lou mentioned it. There's a tight clique that controls the Democratic Party in the Village of Mamaroneck. And let's be honest about it. It's almost 3-1, Democrats, Republicans, and independents and conservatives in the Village of Mamaroneck and non-associated. If we did not get a large number of Democratic votes, we never get elected. And the reason we do get elected is because we are non-political. I've never asked someone what party you belong into if I made an appointment. And the key is, if I had my druthers, I say it every time and I'll say it again. During an election, if you want to run, go out and get yourself 100 signatures and you're on the ballot. And it's exactly what happened here. The hypocrisy, what they did is these people, I talk about transparency and everything else, they didn't seem to understand that I am non-registered, I'm non-affiliated. Lou is a registered Republican, yet we were endorsed by the Republican, the Conservative, and the Independent Party. That was not enough for them. They did not want to. The same clique includes Sue McCrory, who actually brought us another lawsuit to the Supreme Court, claiming that, we didn't do this right on the ballot. We had nothing to do with it. It was it's the political parties themselves that go out and get the signatures. And by a fluke, we missed it by 4 votes. But it's irrelevant. You know why? Because what we did is then we got, instead of the 3 parties, we now are on 4 parties. We got the Reform Party, and I went out after this, and I got the Friendly Village Party. And I got signatures, 228 signatures from people across the board. And everybody said they'd love to do it, they want to do it. And even that was challenged, but it was upheld. So again, the whole idea is get rid of politics in the Village of Mamaroneck, do what's good for the village, and don't worry about it. And I can tell you, we'll go over it later, aside that sounds, that we're just going after them. We can brag easily of what we've done in 6 years and what's been accomplished in the Village of Mamaroneck. And there's a reason why we're rated as #1 by 3 independent groups.
The last show that we did, you were ready packing your bags and heading to Washington, D.C. Why don't you fill us in on your trip to the D.C.?
Absolutely, and it's a great segue talking about positive things. When we first got in, there was the policy of the current administration at that time that you couldn't do anything to help yourself going into the rivers in the Village of Mamaroneck. We were just starting in the Army Corps of Engineers study. And there are 3 basic phases of the Army Corps of Engineers study. One is, what plan do you want? There were 3 or 4. We picked a local plan. It was reviewed by the Army Corps of Engineers, the local one out of New York. They then sent it down to Washington. And the way it works, quite honestly, is the best bang for the dollar. They're not going to spend a lot of money if they don't have to. The fact of the matter is also that the Village of Mamaroneck's study is the only one in the United States was fully funded. And I give credit. You talk about parties working together and everything else. It was fully funded by efforts of our former Congresswoman, Anita Lowy, which is great. Since then, we've had Senator Schumer come down. We've had Congressman Elliot Engel come down. We also had Steve Otis and George Latimer join in on this. This is key to the future of the Village of Mamaroneck. We'll talk about the TOD, and it works in that. We have successfully completed the first phase. What happens next to wrap that up is there will be a report issued by the Army Corps of Engineers out of Washington, and then they'll have the public meeting explaining it. And the next step is probably, they estimate $8 to $10 million from the federal government to do the actual engineering, which is the stage right before you then, of course, go get money from everybody. Right. And this is going to be 65% paid by the feds, I think about 35% or 25% by the state, and the rest will be split by the county and the village. That would be bonded and overnight. It will reduce the flooding in the Village of Mamaroneck anywhere from 2 to 4 feet, sometimes 6 feet. Very few places will, unless you get a tremendous flood, like unfortunately in South Carolina. But we've been told by our planner and other people we're talking about, this will affect the tax base to the point where it at least double the value of properties in the Washingtonville area and also by Warren Park. It's very exciting, and I look forward to it. So the people that own both businesses and residents can look forward, and I would estimate within 2 to 3 years that project should be completed. So it's a fantastic idea.
Mr. Mayor, I know that the village of Mamaroneck and the residents were happy that you were there to represent them, and that it was a meaningful and important time that you spent there. You know, Lou, last time we spoke, we talked about the proactive procedures that the village of Mamaroneck undertook with dredging and doing the best that you can do locally to help mitigate flooding. When we talk about dredging, that silt, all of that comes up needs to go somewhere. And I heard, and maybe you can expound on that, that some of your opponents are saying that it's okay to dredge and then dump off the coast of Mamaroneck.
Yeah, that goes back a few years. There was a newspaper article in the New York Times with Mr. Natchez saying it was okay to dredge. You just dump right back in the sound behind Mamaroneck Beach and Yacht Club, coincidentally, and some other areas, for the boating and stuff like that, and it's ridiculous. But getting back to like we talked in our first show, back in 2010 when we first got in, there was no money for dredging or banking the silt, where they take the silt and they put banks on the banks, raise it, put some rocks down and stuff like that. 2013 was the last time it was done, but in the last 2 years, the money that was appropriated for dredging was used to do our catch basin program and our cleaning and lining program. So not only are we dredging, we're doing cleaning and lining, we're doing our catch basin program. And it's been it's been very effective, and working with the town of Mamaroneck with the dam like we talked about last time. We're very active with this.
We actually, we know for a fact we prevented 3 floods in the village of Mamaroneck in the Washingtonville in the area because of the dredging and so on. Now, quite honestly, I'm not that happy that we didn't dredge in 2014, although, there's some reasons behind it, but it's the type of thing that, we're a bowl. We get 34 square miles that we receive down here, and we have to be very conscious of that. We will be dredging in 2015. Unfortunately, what happened is when we first got in and we had a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers, I specifically asked, there seems to be a philosophy that the village of Mamaroneck can't do anything to help itself. The Army Corps of Engineers tell you could do whatever you want, you go in the river and you do it, and we did it. Unfortunately now, I guess with new personnel, the county gave us permits and the Army Corps of Engineers says, well, now you have to get permits. It'll be slightly delayed, but we will be dredging. And again, as Lou noted, worked very closely with Steve Altieri in the town of Mamaroneck and to lower it.
Also, we just last week approved a pilot program in the Washingtonville area to have the residents bag their leaves and stuff, so the leaves aren't in the streets for parking purposes also, but also washing into the catch basins, clogging the catch basins and going into the sound. So that's a pilot program that's starting. The village will be supplying the bags to the residents. Instead of picking up the leaves twice during the season, they'll be picked up weekly in these areas. We have a whole map for the whole Washingtonville area and flooding area that this is going to be done.
As the show is unfolding here today, and I'm sure that the viewers out there are starting to see a clear difference between Mayor Rosenblum and Deputy Mayor Santoro and their opponents. The candidates that you see in front of you are doing everything that they can to eliminate litigation in the village of Mamaroneck. Being proactive with dredging. You're working, the candidates here that we're with now are working with Save the Sound to improve the quality of water, but yet the opposing candidates, Mr. Natchez, is saying that it's okay to dredge and then dump out off the coast of Mamaroneck. We're starting to see a clear line, a clear delineation. Well, it is hypocrisy. Do as I say and not as I do.
Correct.
Right. So let's continue going. I'm sorry, I had to get that out there.
No, you're 100% right.
It's important, and I hope the people that are watching, can see the passion. And the amount of effort that's going into the campaign and everything that the mayor and the deputy mayor are doing. They're working across the aisle. They're making sure that they're making smart decisions. And now that we're talking about some smart decisions, let's something we didn't touch on our last program was let's talk about the sewers and the sewer inspection program.
Oh, absolutely. That's another great segue. The village of Mamaroneck, because it receives all this flood water, And the fact that we invited Save the Sound, and they did come in, and they are now located in the village of Mamaroneck and testing of the waters. What we did find out, and of course noticed by the DEC and everything, which we work with, that every building, structure in the village of Mamaroneck has what's called a lateral sewer. That's from the structure itself to the official municipal sewer lines. And what we found out is, particularly in low-lying areas such as Shore Acres, but mainly in Orienta because it's so low, they're right at the water level, that some of these old structures in the lateral sewers connections are leaking, and you'll have sewage leak through that out into the ground, and then eventually it'll make its way into the sound. And this is not just for Orienta. This program will be for every structure in the village of Mamaroneck within a 5-year period. And this is, by the way, working with Save the Sound, where you will scope by, with TV, the cameras, and you'll see where the breaks are, and it will be fixed. If you sell a house, you have to do that. We've done that now for illegal hookups. And what it is, it's basically saying, what do you want, not only now, but what do you want for your children and your grandchildren? We live in one of the nicest areas in this country. It's beautiful. You go down Mamaroneck Avenue, you go down to Harbor Island, it's a great park. But you want to make sure that it's effective. Are there times when it gets polluted and the county say you can't open a beach? Yes, but not as much as it used to be. We work very hard on that. And the hypocrisy is, here it is right here, just to show, if people want it, is 1982, Natchez says dump. 2005, Natchez says dump. 2008, Natchez says dump. Well, we're here not to dump on the residents of the village of Mamaroneck. We're here to continue being #1 and having a great quality of life in the village of Mamaroneck, and that's what we're here for. I have no pokes in a fire, and neither does Louis. I mean, we love this job, and we love the people of the village of Mamaroneck. And the real key is, we'll get into it not too much later, but the real key to the village of Mamaroneck is its volunteers, because they come here and they volunteer to do all this extra work, such as the Harbor Island Conservancy. They make Harbor Island look, actually, it turned out to be #1 rated in Westchester County. So, I mean, it just goes on, and all the different events in the village of Mamaroneck. People love the village of Mamaroneck. We just had a beer festival. We had 4,000 people come to the village of Mamaroneck.
In bad
weather.
They left. In bad weather.
Right, and that was bad weather. And I actually sold 6,000 tickets in advance. But now you think about it. You have 4,000 goodwill ambassadors for the village of Mamaroneck. It's great. No, because this is fantastic. It's great. You see people out from the village of Mamaroneck. You see people from all over. They said the majority of the tickets were sold in Westchester. The next group was from Brooklyn, believe it or not. And we were told that people were walking back and forth. They were going into different stores. They went into Roberts. They went to this store to shop. And they went to different restaurants to eat. That's what you want. We want to be #1 destination.
And people taking that time, they're taking photos and everything, and sharing those special memories with their family and friends. Yeah. Right?
Just one thing with the harbor. Right now we're looking to replace the boom down the harbor, which is in the swimming area, because it's over the course of the years, it's aged and it has some issues with it. So rather than going for a repair, we're being proactive. We're soliciting prices to replace that. Our beach this year issued 2,000 permits for the beach this year. We've had one of the best beach seasons ever for parking and for the beach. There was a kayak program for the kids, for the adults, paddle boats, canoes down there. There was racing at nighttime, beach volleyball. 18 teams down there playing beach volleyball. There was so much request for beach volleyball, we had to move it to the fields, and they're playing on the fields. And it's adults, and it's kids, and people come down here. One incident over this past summer, a bus pulls up down the harbor, and 45 people stand down and says, "We want a group rate. We're all here together." And where did these people come from? Where did they hear about harbor? Yeah. Oh, we heard you had paddle boats. We heard we have this, and this is, we had a wine festival last month. October 25th is our 5th annual Spooktacular. It's a Halloween and window painting for the kids that the mayor and myself, we went to the Chamber of Commerce and said, look, when we were growing up here, we had this. Why don't we have this? Let's get it done. And this will be our 5th year running now that this program has started, and it's October 25th at 11 a.m. on the Avenue.
Yeah, November 1st, actually, another event's going to come up. It's a brand new sport with 3 teams playing at the same time. Howard Jordan's doing that one. But even more important, let's give credit where credit's due. Lou and I helped mitigate, facilitate, and so on. But we happen to be lucky enough. We hired several people. One of them was a new Superintendent of Recreation, Sandy Kokatsis. I can tell you that we are so lucky to have her here. You can even speak to that better as a member of the liaison to Recreation Department. Across the board, my God, 5 minutes left. Anyway, she's fantastic. We have to talk about other things. I'd like to talk about the TOD.
Yeah, you know what? I want you to talk
thing.
about that, because there's a one thing that elected officials can do to help mitigate taxes, and that is to do smart development, create a better tax base, and help alleviate the burden on the homeowners.
Absolutely, and this clearly shows the difference between our opponents. We were very proud to sponsor and work on a TOD and pass it. Actually, and it was passed, obviously, with Democratic support also. This is key to the future of the village of Mamaroneck. What you're doing is you are improving this stretch from the railroad bridge down to Mamaroneck Avenue School. You're going to create new retail space, new affordable residential space. It will raise the tax base and so on. This also, for the environment, which we didn't unfortunately get a chance to talk about, encourages people not to drive, but to walk from where they are, which is walkable to the railroad station. Our opponents are dead set against it, and it's outright lies. There is no such thing, and you're restricted by zoning. I can tell you now, guarantee there is no such thing as a high-rise on the Boston Post Road or on Mamaroneck Avenue. It's ridiculous. I find it repugnant and repulsive that someone is so desperate that they're putting out lies and misstatements only to get a vote. I would never lie to get a vote. It's just not worth it. But I can tell you the village will remain number one and continue to be number one because of programs like the TOD. It's just an amazing village, and it has to do, again, with the volunteers and so on that come out. We were given an award for the TOD, and this is the way to go in most communities.
And both people who filed that Article 78 with the TOD, they don't even live in the area that it's affected. One lives on Jefferson,
and again,
one
Sue
lives
McCrory was one of the
which is
part of the clip.
Which is Dan's treasurer for his campaign.
And before you go any further, TOD, Transit-Oriented District, Lou.
Development.
Yes,
Development.
It's to encourage people and buildings in the Washingtonville area who less transportation, who commute to the city or commute to Connecticut, do more walking and transit development, and that's what it is. And there's no plans. There's no plans submitted. There's no talk about thousands of condos on the avenue and the Post Road, as our opponents have put out videos
anyway.
saying that and everything.
There is definitely
there's no truth to it.
There's definitely a lot that your opponents are saying that are wrong. They're not true. I want to urge everybody, and I'm going to give the candidates a moment to wrap up, but I want to urge everybody that if you hear something from a candidate, do due diligence. Find out the facts and find out who's telling the truth and who is lying. Lou, let's wrap it up.
Okay, that was quick. But I just I thank you once again, Bill, for your time, and to the mayor. One more thing that we're doing before the campaign, which is on November 3rd is Election Day, 2015. We have the ballot. We're on the Republican line, which is B. We're on the Conservative line, which is C. And we're on H, which is a Reform Party and the Friendly Village Party. So there's 3 different lines you can vote for us. And support us. I ask all the residents out there to continue to support the mayor and myself come November 3rd. We still have some more projects we'd like to complete and to keep the village moving forward and doing the job that we're told we're doing a good job. Thank you.
And very quickly, I put in to get rid of and kill the scare tactics. There will be, whether it be the A&P or not, there will be a grocery store on that site. Depending, it could be 1 grocery store, 2, depending on what it is. A&P does not own that property. It's a private group. Actually, it's a publicly traded group that owns it. There will be a store there for the people in that area. But I can only tell you, we love the village of Mamaroneck. If you like the village of Mamaroneck, vote for us. If you wanted to go back 10 years, vote for our opposition. It's really that simple.
Well, I want to thank Mayor Rosenblum and Trustee Santora for spending time with me today. I want to urge and I want to make sure that the taxpayers are aware that the future of Mamaroneck it depends on the elections. So the future of Mamaroneck is best in the hands of Norm and Lou. I want to ask everybody to please vote for Norm and Lou on Election Day. I want to thank LMC-TV and Dina and her beautiful dog Sunday for giving us the opportunity to spend this time with her and to speak to the residents. Once again, I thank you, and God bless the village of Mamaroneck.
And God bless America.
Thank you.